Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. Use the link that's right here in the description. It bypasses the Apple upcharge, just $2.99 per month. Gives you access to 10 different channels, plus the stage shows. We're going to be doing regular stage shows. We're going to be doing post-game stage shows. We call it Floor Seats. You're going to want to check that out. You're not going to get that content anywhere else. This is the best Heat community. We call it the most Heat anywhere. So click on the link there in the description and it gets you right in. Click all the way through, pay the $2.99 a month, and you're all ready to go. You can cancel at any time. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Includes Underdog Fantasy. Use the code 5. Yes, that's the code 5. Get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Underdog's the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports with over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won. Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Do you like Jaime Jaquez to break out of his slump? You can play that. You can play anything there across the sports spectrum. Check it out. Plenty more there on the app. Again, use the code 5 to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. But here's the deal. You must be at least 18 or 19 in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 in Colorado for some games, 21 in Massachusetts or Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts, we're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most Heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on 5 Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. We have done the podcast rounds here for the last few days, trying to get through another break. Feels like the Heat never play anymore, and then they're going to play a ton. They do play tonight against OKC. I'll be there with Brady and Alex. We've got Greg and Adele with you on the post-game show tonight. That one actually may be originating live on the YouTube channel, so check that out as well. But we've done episodes on Terry Rozier, Jimmy Butler / Bradley Beal, Jaime Jaquez, that's the latest one. That one was done with Brady and I, kind of why Jaime is struggling right now. And now we want to talk about Tyler Herro, because we've done some Herro episodes before, but now there's some markers, because now at this point, the league is starting to notice. Fans around the league are starting to notice. And also, all-star voting is open. And Tyler has made it clear that being an all-star is a priority for him. Now, he downplayed it at the beginning of this season, but now that he's playing at this level, it's a goal again, and it deserves to be a goal because, in my view, he should be on the team, but we're going to get into how he gets on the team. But this was the big thing that came out today. NBA.com does its NBA MVP ladder. We don't typically see a lot of Heat players on there. Now, they have 10 guys that they rotate. I don't know if David Aldridge is still doing it. No, he's with the Athletic now, so it's not him anymore. It might be Ashburner. Not sure which reporter is doing it. But they list their top 10, and, of course, it switches week to week. And there have been some Jimmy Butler sightings over the years when he's been with Miami. There's never been a Tyler Herro sighting. And Tyler Herro came in 10th there today. And this is someone who, before the season, we were doing podcast episodes about him being in the 60s and 70s on various NBA rank lists, like CBS Sports's, like ESPN's. And now he's 10th on the MVP ladder. So I'm going to go through the exact the order here, Greg. But we were planning on doing an all-star discussion here anyway. But if he's 10th in MVP voting, he's an all-star. We don't even need to do this conversation because there's going to be 24 players who are picked for the all-star team, right?
Exactly. I mean,
right?
that would be the logic, is that if you're top 10 in MVP consideration, you should immediately be added to an all-star team. I don't think Tyler, and I don't think fans necessarily expect that he would get voted in as a starter, But as the reserves go, if you're 10th in MVP, I'm just going to say consideration, because the way the voting would break down, you're really talking about only like the top 4 guys have a real shot at it in actuality. But the fact that you're even in the conversation, to me, puts you in that class. And the other part of this that I think is important, just from an all-star perspective, is like, who's going to make the team off the bench? Are you going to have guys like LaMelo make the team because he's averaging 30 a game, but he's on an awful Charlotte team? Like, does he get a spot 4th in the league in scoring? I just think if the Heat are in a top 5 seed and you see Tyler Herro's, I think he's 3rd in 3-pointers made. At the percentages, only Anthony Edwards and Peyton Pritchard are really in the same ballpark as Tyler this year. I just think he's got legs to stand on to be on an all-star team. And the fact that he's in an MVP ladder of any kind is just so contrary to what I think all Heat fans kind of expected for this season. And it just shows you, I guess, that you can't ever the NBA is so unpredictable. And like, look where we are with Tyler Herro. We're having conversations of him being on MVP lists. So I think he's got a good shot at it, but there's only a limited amount of spots, a limited amount of guards. And so it could get competitive with some of these guys on bad teams. I mean, even Trae Young, who's also on that MVP ladder that we're referencing, which I just want to point out was written by Sean Powell.
Okay. So, yeah, I have known Sean a long time. Actually, Sean, for those who don't remember, and you have to be very old to remember this, used to cover the Heat for the Miami Herald way back when. That's how Sean got his start, actually, in the business, and he's been in a bunch of places, New York Newsday, et cetera. Great guy, and very good at his job. And he put Tyler Herro in 10th, which, again, that is not something we expected. I'm old enough to remember a lot of things and then not remember some others. I'm old enough to remember when we would talk about Tyler Herro being traded and Jimmy Butler being an all-star. And now we're talking about Jimmy Butler being traded and Tyler Herro being an all-star. We're also, by the way, are not talking about Bam Adebayo as an all-star. And we're going to hit on that in this episode as well. Let me go through the top 10 here in overall. And this is, again, not East or West. This is just the MVP ladder. And then we'll get into the all-star conversation and the new format in the all-star game, because that does matter here a little as well. 1, they have Jokic. 2, they have Giannis. I was actually just asked, Tim Bontemps of ESPN includes me in their straw poll that they do. And so he always texts me in the middle of the night. He says, I need your top 5 in MVP. And I just do it and send it to Tim. And I'm like, okay. And I don't really give it a lot of thought. I actually had Jokic first and Giannis second this week, but I think I might flip it. Jokic needs to play a little defense at the end of games. That wasn't great last night. Giannis seems to be coming on. They have Shea third, which is where I have him. We're going to see him tonight. He has Luka 4th, Jason Tatum 5th, Cat 6th, had a huge game against his old team in Minnesota last night. I wonder how long this lasts in New York, but it has been a honeymoon for him in New York. So Anthony
I think they got Luka too high, though, as we're just going through the list here.
I agree with you. I don't think Luka's a top 5 guy right now. I think that's reputation. He's not had a great start to the season. I'm not saying he won't get there. He can have a 3-week run where he just goes nuts, but I don't think he's been the 4th best guy. Look, I'm good with anything that puts the Boston guys out of the top 4.
Amen.
but I don't know that I can agree with it. Also, who's not on this list is Donovan Mitchell. We'll get to that in a second. They've been with Boston, the best team in the East this year. He has similar numbers to Tyler, although, as I pointed out, Tyler's a little better. But again, Cleveland's results have been better. So they have Tatum 5th, Cat 6th, Anthony Davis 7th, Wemby 8th. Seems a little early, but he has been going nuts lately, and they are way above expectations. Trae 9th, guy in Atlanta. The 9th and 10th guys on this list are guys who have been talked about in trades more than they've been talked about for MVP. Trae Young 9th and Tyler Herro 10th. Let me just give you some names who are not on there. Okay. None of the Phoenix guys. So no Booker, no Durant, who's missed some time, but again.
And no Beal? What?
No Beal. No James Harden, although I will say Harden's having a very good year for the Clippers. He's kept them afloat, along with Norm Powell, but he's not on there. No Anthony Edwards, who before the season was considered to be an MVP favorite. Actually, I think he was the MVP favorite at some of the books in Vegas. He was certainly in the top 3. Tyler Herro is in your top 10. Anthony Edwards is not. Eastern Conference, obviously nobody on Philadelphia before the season. Embiid was a candidate. That has not worked out so well. And the other guy in Milwaukee, Dame Lillard, who, of course, Tyler was supposed to be traded for, not on there. I mentioned Donovan Mitchell, not on there. Am I missing any other high-profile names in the West? Trying to think. With Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Denver, they're covered there.
I mean, does Jalen Brunson have a
well, Jalen Brunson, yes. Now they got Cat on the list, so it seems like they've given him
one guy
in terms of the Knicks. But you're right, he's not on there. Orlando, boy, they've had a couple guys who came out flying this year, and they both got hurt. Paolo and Franz Wagner. I mean, honestly, Franz would be on this list, the top 10. I think he was getting there. I think he was on there before he got hurt because he got off to a terrific start of the season. But they've lost both players, but they managed to, again, like some of these other teams, stay afloat. But if you look at the West, I'm trying to think who else has popped there. Sacramento, no. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox is somebody we talk about a lot. But there's some big names that are not on this list. Again, there were 70 names ahead of Tyler on the ESPN rank list before this season.
That's the irony.
Right? And now he's 10th. And it's just one person's opinion. It's Sean's opinion. Obviously, Sean has a slight Miami bias because he worked down here at one point. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. But when you start to look at Tyler's numbers compared to some of these other players on numbers alone, not necessarily on the Heat's record, it's hard to make an argument for some over him. Now, Anthony Davis is 7th. LeBron James is not on this list, for instance. Right? Old standbys like Paul George. I mean, Kawhi's been hurt. But to get to this stage where you are 10th, you're doing a lot of things right. And it's why we praised him over and over this year. And
no
let me just
Steph?
No, that's another. Okay, that's the name I was looking for. Steph, right. And Steph has been a little bit up and down of late. Actually, Tyler's numbers are better than Steph, but we obviously would understand if Steph was put ahead of him. They lost by like 50. You know who else is not on this list? John Morant. Memphis has had a big turnaround this year, and Morant has been a big part of it. Tyler's numbers are better than John Morant's, but I certainly would understand if John Morant, with Memphis's record being better than the Heat, and Ja's reputation as a former number 2 overall pick in the same draft as Tyler, by the way, I would understand if John Morant was ahead of him. But let me just go through his numbers here just to, again, put this into a little bit of perspective on what Tyler's done so far. So 24 games, 24.1 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4.8 assists, shooting splits of 48, 41, and 88. Win shares are all the metrics are basically positive. Now he's had a couple of clunker games here over the past 10, but not many. I mean, the last one, of course, he made the shot, send the game to overtime. He missed the one at the end. He was 9 of 25. That's only the 5th time this year, by the way, that he has taken 10 or more shots. He's taken 10 more shots in every game. So it's only the 5th time this year that he shot under 40% in a game. Tyrese Maxey has played several fewer games than Tyler Herro. That's happened to him 9 times. By the way, that's another name that's not here on the list. Now, I know Philadelphia is struggling and Maxey missing time, but before this season, people were putting Maxey in the top 25, right, Greg?
And also, I think it was unquestioned, that Tyrese Maxey was considered a much better player than Tyler Herro, and he's not having a better season than Tyler Herro right now. He's just not.
How many guards? Well, you know what? We should do this in the context of the All-Star discussion. So let me throw this out because I don't know if people understand the new format, but it doesn't change the way that All-Stars are determined. Okay. And I know that the players hate the new format already. This is, again, Adam Silver throwing some bleep at the wall. I don't really understand the point of this, just like I didn't understand the in-season tournament. I think I've been proven right on the in-season tournament, like having teams play for something meaningless in Las Vegas where nobody cares in the middle of the season and it breaks up everybody else's rhythm. I think they need to scrap it. And I think they're going to end up scrapping this All-Star thing too, but they're trying. But anyway, the voting process to determine the 24 All-Stars remains the same. The 5 players honored as starters in each conference. So it's really silly because the teams are not going to play for their conferences, but they're picked based on their conferences. I'm like, if they're not going to play for their conferences, Greg, why not just open it up and take the best 24, right?
They're calling this a reimagined event, and it feels like it hasn't been well thought through. Because then they're going to split them up into 3 teams, and they're going to play like a tournament style event where you have to score a certain amount of points. I think it's like you get to 40 or something like that. First to 40 wins in the games. And then the players are being drafted by what is it? Charles, Kenny, and Shaq.
Yes. So the honorary general managers, it's Team Charles, Well, Laura, let me get to how they're picked first, and then let's get to that. The voting process to determine the 24 All-Stars remain the same. The 5 players honored as starters in each conference, again, why are you doing this based on conference, will be selected by fans, 50% of the vote, current NBA players, 25%, and a media panel, 25%. It's important to say who's being selected, who's selecting, because I do think this impacts Tyler, although he's not going to be a starter anyway. But it would impact Tyler if he was up to be a starter. But fan vote would go towards Tyler. Current NBA players and media, I don't know. It's funny. Jimmy always did really poorly with current NBA players when he was up for All-Star. Because I think a lot of NBA players, there's just resentment of him for a variety of reasons.
100%.
Right. And then it says the 7 players honored as reserves in each conference will be selected by NBA head coaches. So really what we're talking about is who are the starters? And then once those starters are out of the way, will the NBA head coaches make Tyler one of the 7 reserves in the East? Even though the East thing is stupid because they're not playing East versus West. It really should be they pick the top 10. They pick 10 starters, right? And then they pick the other 14 players or whatever, picked by the coaches across the conferences. That's what they should do, okay? But they're not. That's not what they're doing. So anyway, what we're dealing with Tyler is, will the coaches pick him to be one of 7 reserves in the East? Once that happens, then there's this extra layer where all these players are thrown in a hat, and Team Kenny, Team Charles, and Team Shaq pick them, and then those 3 teams, they'll be in a tournament with the Rising Stars game champion. I mean, seriously, Adam, what was it? I don't want to say it. I like Adam.
It's a lot.
Really do.
It's super extra.
It's just here's what they should have done. Just pay them more. Like, I know they're giving them some money for this. What is it? Okay, the 4 teams participating in the NBA All-Star Game will compete for a prize pool of $1.8 million. So in other words, basically what Giannis tips in the visiting locker room. With each player on the championship winning team receiving $125,000, each player on the second place team receiving $50,000, and each player on the third and fourth place teams receiving $25,000. I mean, that the differences between that amount of money, except to the Rising Stars guys, means nothing. Nothing. Seriously, it's a rounding error for them. And if they really want to do the right thing and earn the public's respect on this, then the players should come out and say, we're going to give the money to charity. Yeah. And honor their particular charity. That's what should be done, but I'm not forcing people to give their money away. But if they're trying to incentivize players with that amount of money and then just creating these extra layers that don't make any sense, Kevin Durant is right. It's idiotic. Okay? It's idiotic. But Tyler wants to be there, and it's in San Francisco. So this is not one of those Central Division sites that they've been foisting on us the past few years. So it's a good place to go play in his first All-Star game. And by the way, Tyler would only be a year older than Dwayne was or a year and a half older than Dwayne was for his first All-Star game, which I covered. That was Dwayne's first All-Star game in Denver, which happened to be LeBron's first All-Star game, which was in their second season. And nobody cared about Dwayne there, which is how we got to know Dwayne even better, because we were out there because everybody was with LeBron. And of course, that was, Dwayne's talked about that All-Star game in Denver as being monumental in terms of his development in his career. So this could be a really good thing for Tyler. And on the other side of this, as we've now introduced it, we will get into whether or not he should be one of the 7 reserves in the Eastern Conference. All right. All of that to say, if you have a leak in your house or your place of business, reach out to Water Cleanup of Florida. It's WCUFL.com. From the very first step, the preventative maintenance is critical. If you don't do that and you see a leak, you should still reach out to them. If you don't do that and you see damage, you should reach out to them. Again, it's WCUFL.com. More than 100 5-star reviews on Google, based in Boca Raton. Michael Robert, his team, will take care of you every step of the way. Again, really good people. If they can't do the job, they will let you know they can't. But most jobs they can handle for you, and they handle the entire Tri-County area. So check it out, WCUFL.com. It's Water Cleanup of Florida. If you've got the schmutz,
they got the guts.
All right, let's get to the East here. Based on these rules, okay, because again, they're still doing the East-West thing. So based off these rules, who do you think the 5 starters will be that are voted on by the fans? That's 50% of the vote. Current NBA players, 25%, and a media panel.
It's tough. Does Joel Embiid get in the mix? It's tough for me to go there because of the way that he's played. But I mean, I think you can count on Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can count on Jason Tatum probably being voted in, and Karl Anthony Towns. Does that sound like a starting front court? I mean, I think
it does, but are they voting it? And this is another thing I'm trying to figure out, because now they've changed this rule again. Are they voting it based off center, forward, guard, or
3 front court, 2 back court?
Okay, so that they kept the same. Well, kept the same as it's been in recent years.
Yeah, I'm actually voting as we're potting right now. Okay, so I see that it's 3 front court, 2 back court.
All right, so right, there's no way Embiid should be in this game. Right? He's not in any game lately, so there's no way he should be in this game. That doesn't mean he won't get voted in. We've seen some crazy things happen over the years, but I would assume with the New York backing and fans counting for 50%, that Cat gets the nod, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking.
I mean, it's why Dame could get the nod in the backcourt, which I know we're going to get to that next. But just straight up off of his rep as a player throughout all these years, he's still putting up relatively good numbers. And Milwaukee's gotten better. They got that exposure in the in-season tournament. So to me, I think that the starters probably will be Cat, like you mentioned, and then Donovan Mitchell and Dame in the backcourt. Again, I'm trying to just project the way that the voters will go, because this will allow us to isolate how the coaches will manage the reserve list. Because I think it actually is helping Tyler that they still are keeping the format where they're going to have an equal number of East and West players.
I agree.
The coaches off the bench, I think, are going to reward what Tyler's doing, provided the Heat are in the top 5 in the conference as they sit today. Like that I think is where the coaches will lean in and recognize Tyler. So if the fans were part of the voting process with the reserves, this could get a little wonky, because I don't think that coaches are going to be inclined to reward. Maybe LaMelo gets in because his scoring numbers are that great, because he's averaging 30 a game. But I would tend to think that the empty calorie players would fall down a notch in the coaches' minds. And that helps Tyler, because contrary to what everybody thought, he's been anything but empty calories on offense.
Right. Well, I do think it matters who gets in as the starting guards, and I do think that will affect Tyler. I'm looking at this start. Okay, here's the leaders in points per game in the Eastern Conference, since, again, they're doing the East-West thing. Giannis, and he's certainly an all-star. LaMelo, let's table that conversation here for a second. Okay, so we have LaMelo. Paolo would have been an all-star, but he only played 5 games, and he's still hurt. So that's out. He definitely would have been an all-star this year. Tatum, he'll likely, as we said, start. Dame, let's table it for a second. I do think he'll start. I think he has player respect, and players do count as 25% of the vote. Media counts as 25% of the vote. He has enough of a mix from all of it that I think he gets in. Maxey is the wild card here because, again, they're 7-11 in his games. Okay, he missed some time, and his metrics are not good. Like, he's shooting 41%. He's at 31% from 3, but he was projected to be an all-star this year, and I feel like that may influence it. I don't think he would get voted in, but I don't know.
Donovan Mitchell has to have one of those spots with Cleveland in the 1 seed. I feel like that's...
Well, he's going to get the player vote, but okay, there's Brunson.
That's true.
And
wouldn't it be funny if there's 2 Knicks and not 2 Celtics? That would be interesting.
It could be, and it also what position do they have Jaylen Brown listed as?
Front court.
Okay. All right.
That's why I went Tatum, but I mean, I guess they're kind of interchangeable to a degree, although I think Tatum's had a little bit better of a season overall.
Yes, I mean, Jaylen's coming off I kind of feel like if it's all player vote, Jaylen would win, but it's not. So Tatum has had better overall numbers. They're not a lot better. They're roughly the same. I mean, both of them deserve to be on the team. There's going to be a Derek White discussion here that we're going to have to get into too. So then next in scoring, Cam Thomas, but they're 7-10 and they're going the other direction. Tyler will make it over him, right? We believe.
Yeah, the coaches will reward Miami being a higher ranked team. That's just how that'll play out.
Okay, we mentioned Brunson. Let's table that. Franz Wagner would have made it as a front court player. I think him or Paolo, but I don't know. We're not going to probably have an Orlando player. If both, unless Paolo came back here and had a real run before All-Star, that's possible. But it sounds like Wagner's going to be out longer. Then Tyler is 11th in scoring in the East. Now, the guys who are right under him, Cade Cunningham, where do they have Cade listed? Is that as a guard?
He's a guard. And Trae Young, he could get voted in too. I know I went Dame, but Trae Young has a shot with the fans also, I think.
Well, Trae does, and Zach LaVine does too. Not with the fans to get voted in, but he has a chance to get in this conversation because actually they're 12-12 in his games this year, and his splits are good. I was surprised by this. He's shooting 51%, 44% from three. I mean, you can argue that his season, he's averaging a little less in points per game. He's never been an engaged defender. I've heard he's been a little better this year. I haven't watched a lot of Bulls games. Herro and him their numbers aren't that far off from each other. Then you mentioned Trae, whose numbers are much worse than Tyler's, by the way, with the exception of the assists. I mean, Trae's shooting under 40% from the field. He's still, I know people have been highlighting his defensive effort this year, but he's still a bad defender, right? I mean, he hasn't improved that much. And then Brandon Miller has had a nice breakout year. He's 18th in scoring, but again, Charlotte's not good enough. And Darius Garland has played well this year, and I think some coaches may want to reward Cleveland with 2. So I would watch for that also. But let's just say as starters, Giannis, Tatum, Towns start. You're leaning towards, again, combination of fan vote 50%, media vote 25%, player vote 25%. You think
Mitchell's
Mitchell gets
in
one?
For sure.
Okay,
for
sure. So Mitchell's in for sure. So are we saying so here would be the options for the other guard spot to be voted in that way. Dame, LaMelo, Brunson.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we think it goes?
I initially said Dame because Milwaukee's been sort of rising lately. The New York thing, just to have 2 New York Knicks starting, they're only 17-10. I mean, I would feel like you'd want to give it to one of the 20-win teams, Boston or Cleveland, if you're going to have two starters. I know that the fan vote doesn't necessarily always lean in that direction. I'm going to stick with who I said initially in Dame, but it could easily be I don't think it'll be LaMelo. I don't know that he's that popular that the fans are going to carry it, and he's not going to get it from the other places because they're just not good. I mean, they're 7-20. I mean, right. You can't have I guess you could have him off the bench, but I'm going to go Dame Lillard.
You know what's crazy here? I still think there's a chance. And looking at the East, I still think there's a chance that Bam gets in over Tyler.
Really?
Who are the backup bigs? Let's say Embiid's not in there, and you've got Giannis, Tatum, Towns, Mitchell, and Dame. Okay, Jalen is going to make it, right? And a front court player, right? He's not a big,
for sure.
But
he's going to make it. And this is where they could also reward Cleveland with Mobley. Evan Mobley. He's getting 18 and 9.
Okay, so let's say it's Mobley. Okay, let's just say who are your first 3 on that the coaches would vote for if they're left with the board in the East, with the exception of Giannis, Tatum, Towns, Mitchell, and Dame. They're going to take Jaylen Brown for sure.
Yeah,
they're going to take Mobley. I think I agree with you on that because again, where they're at, there's not a big on Boston to take, right? Porzingis is not there, and
Orlando's guys.
Well, one of Orlando's guys potentially, but they have to be healthy. I mean, Paolo would have to really come on here, once he's fully healthy. But again, I'm looking at the rest of the East, and
it gets shallow.
Well, and what about Vucevic?
He's playing well enough. He had a really great game. They beat Boston last night, and he was like just adding fuel to the Twitter rumors for Heat fans wanting Vooch in Miami. But I don't know. They're 2 games below 500. I don't see them necessarily just giving I think that they'd go smaller and add more forwards, for lack of a better term.
But who would those forwards even be? Because I'm looking at Vooch's numbers, right? You're right. They're 12 and 15 in his games. He's shooting, his splits are 59, 48, and 86, and he's averaging 21 and 10. I know he's a trade candidate now,
Siakam is averaging 20 and 10, shooting 43% from three. I mean, like he's kind of leading Indiana, who's at a bit of a same spot as Chicago. So, I mean, I guess that's another name in the conversation. People have also said a lot about Jalen Johnson in Atlanta being a potential option off the bench. I don't quite see that. I think he's probably a year away. But you're right. This is why I always, and I'm glad that we're getting in a roundabout way to Bam here, is that I almost had started to consider Bam an automatic all-star every year because of the way the Eastern Conference shook out. And it's a weird spot that he could have this weird of a start and actually be in consideration still, because there's still time to go. And I think he's kind of broken out of some of that offensive funk. But you're right. It's shallow, and Boston isn't so far ahead that you're going to give them like 4 all-stars like they would have done in previous years, where maybe like a Porzingis sneaks into the conversation or something like that. That's not happening this year. So you're right. I mean, like Bam
and
does
no
have
Embiid,
a shot.
and no Embiid, and that's the other thing. And I do think that they're going to reward Cleveland with 2, which is why I would agree with you on Mobley. So I think Jaylen Brown and Mobley on the bench, yes. I think there's that one kind of open spot if one of the Orlando guys got healthy. And then I think it's probably looking at one spot for Vucevic, Bam, or Siakam. Okay. And again, this is assuming. Now, if that's the case, then this is assuming that Orlando gets a spot. If there's nobody else for them to take, they're not going to take Terrell Suggs or KCP or anything like that. So if we're and they're going to be irritated.
Suggs, that was great. Jalen Suggs.
Did I say Terrell Suggs? I said Jalen Suggs. I'm sorry, Terrell Suggs. Yeah, no, Terrell Suggs did some damage against the Dolphins over the years. But okay, let's put the Orlando spot to the side. Let's say Jaylen Brown, Evan Mobley, and then one from Vucevic, Siakam, and Bam. If that's the case, it leaves you with 4 guard spots off the bench, not including, again, if you're saying Jaylen Jaylen Brown is a front court player. So if there's 4 guard spots, your options are LaMelo, Maxey, Brunson, Cade, Trey, and Tyler.
It's an interesting conversation. I mean, they all can make cases, but I personally don't see anyone on that list, and I mean any of them, that are clearly heads and shoulders above Tyler Herro in the way that they're having their season. I just statistically watching some of these guys, whether it's against Miami or just, kind of checking around the league. And then you see how Tyler Herro has reshaped his game. To me, like the shot diet, it's just a different situation for Tyler. And so that's it. He's gonna, and I think the coaches, and this, I'm going to just come back to this, the teams above 500, I think, are going to be looked at in a better light by the coaches than the below 500 bottom feeders. And it's why, like, Scotty Barnes is having an all-star level season. He's almost averaging a triple-double, but you can't, right?
You can't.
There's 7 and 21.
Well, you can't with Cade. I don't think you can with Cade either, but I'll tell you this. The coach is going to put Brunson on the team. So the coach is going to put Brunson on the team. So I should just reserve that spot. So let's say off the bench, Jaylen Brown, the coaches love Brunson. So if that's there's no question. And it's New York market, and they're over 500. Okay. And he's deserving. He's having a good season. It's been overshadowed by Towns, but he's still having a good season. So Jaylen Brown, Mobley, Brunson, and then one from Vucevic, Bam, or Siakam leaves you with 3 spots. LaMelo, I'm taking Tyler over Maxey. Maxey has not had anywhere near the year that Tyler's had. You can't make the case. You can make the case he has higher upside if you want to still make that case. He's not having a better season. So I put Tyler over him. I believe the coaches will too. I think coaches will look at Philadelphia's record and they'll give it to Tyler. I do believe that. I think that the LaMelo conversation is tough because his numbers are so outsized. And then I look at Trey, and yes, Trey's team has been better than LaMelo's. His assists are way up from where LaMelo's are. Not way up, but they're up. I think, what is he at? LaMelo's averaging 7.5 assists. I mean, Trey averages 12.2 assists. He also shoots 39%.
Trey's getting on the team, I think. whether being voted in and then it has nothing to do with our opinion, or
Right.
I think just because Atlanta also is 500, and
Yes.
I think that they'll just look at trying to get at least a guy from a team that's in the playoff race onto the all-star team off the bench.
Well, that's the case always. Is you got Garland, whose team is 22-4 when he plays.
He may make it. Maybe they get 3. He's averaging 20 a game. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers now. I mean, they're 23-4.
Right. Well, I don't think they would lean 3 in this case. I think Mobley's the more likely. I'm looking at Mobley's numbers. 21-4 in his games. He's averaging 18 points, 9 rebounds, a couple of assists. He's shooting 56% from the floor. He's a good defender. He's not the defender he's made out to be, but he's a good defender. He protects the paint. I think Mobley gets in. But to cycle back to Tyler here, it does feel like if you're saying Trey's a given, and let's say that Orlando gets a guy, which I don't think is going to happen, then you're talking about one spot after Brunson and Trey as backcourt players off the bench. And this is where it may get ugly for Tyler, where you may have LaMelo, because he's averaging 30 points a game, put on over Tyler Herro, even though Tyler is much more efficient than LaMelo. Or you could have Cade, who has good overall stats. There's no question. And look, they've beaten the Heat twice, and he's played a role in it. But I'm looking at their overall, kind of still feels like they're a year away from them winning enough for this to be the case. But, I mean, he is averaging 23.9. They haven't been awful this year. They're 10-14 when he plays. They've been better. 46% from the floor, 39% from 3 on volume. He's also averaging 7.3 rebounds and 9.6 assists. I mean, statistically,
it's like Scotty Barnes, but I just don't know that the teams.
But they've been better than Toronto. They have been
That's
better
true.
than Toronto. Like, you have to eliminate the Barnes. I take him out of the equation. If Maxey makes the team over Herro, that is a total injustice. Okay. I don't think LaMelo should make the team over Tyler, but I can see that happening, and I could see Cade making the team over Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start to add some of those guards together, Tyler can end up being 13th guy injury replacement. That may be where this is heading. And we also could have the scenario where if Bam has a good couple of weeks here,
or Jimmy, we're going to go the whole episode and not mention Jimmy?
Well, he ain't going anyway. We know that, right? Like,
this is true. He doesn't want to go, but it's actually not that bad of a destination. So maybe he actually would.
Well, don't say it's not that bad of a destination, because it's one of the destinations that's been discussed for him as a possible destination to play his regular basketball games. But
it was a double entendre.
Look, Jimmy's better than a lot of these guys we're talking about, and his efficiency numbers are better than a lot of these guys, and he's having a better season than Bam. We agree on that?
Mm-hmm. So far.
Oh, so far. But I think the odds of Bam getting in are at least equal to Tyler's, just because of the competition level at the guard position and the flashiness of some of those guards. Trey and LaMelo and Brunson in particular, I'm just having a hard time. I do think the coaches will look past Maxey, but I'm having a hard time seeing the coaches look past Trey, Brunson, and LaMelo, and then it may come down to Cade or Tyler. Whereas it may come down to Bam or Siakam or Vucevic, and Vucevic has better numbers.
Bam's the only double guy of those 3.
What would we feel about this? I mean, what would it would get a little awkward, right? Like I got.
It wouldn't be fair to Tyler. Tyler has to. I really hope that, and it's why I think that the chances increase for him. And I'll reiterate it as we get close to closing. The coaches are going to reward winning. They always have. They have forever. And
but
so
they love the things that Bam does to contribute to winning.
Yeah.
Could the final spot come down to Bam or Tyler?
That would be nuts. Yeah.
I mean, if I polled this right now, this is totally different. If I polled this
on Twitter, 80% will be Tyler, I bet.
What if I threw Jimmy in the mix? Who is the Heat's real all-star this season?
I think Tyler will get the majority of the vote, 60%.
Okay, I'm going to poll it. I'm going to see. So I will say this. I will give Tyler, at this point, about a 55% chance of making the All-Star team. I don't think it's a slam dunk because of the name recognition of some of these guards in the East, even if he's been much more efficient than them. I do. I'm with you on the coaches rewarding it. And I think that they respect the fact. I think they look at Spo, and there's a lot of respect for Spo, and the fact that Spo has given Tyler this role this year and he's run with it will be beneficial. But I just see more of a glut in the backcourt of the East than I do in the front court. And I think that could lead to conversation here about, Bam's going, but he says, no, Tyler, take my spot, to something like that.
Well, remember Anthony Mason wanted Brian Grant to take his spot way back when?
I do.
The Heat need to send Cooper Moorhead's newest article about Tyler to all of the coaches, and that'll help sway the vote.
Yeah, Cooper does a great job of that stuff. All right, appreciate it, Greg. What would you put the percentage at? I'm saying 55% chance he makes the team.
I'm going 60. I think that we should give him a better than 50-50 shot at getting in. I just think the coaches are going to reward Tyler's season. He's transcended a lot of the stuff, a lot of the narrative on him, and I think that the coaches specifically will hone in on that.
Okay. I would go to 60 if we say he gets in as an injury reserve, which wouldn't that be great? All the talk about Tyler and his injury history. If Dame has a strained hamstring or something, and Tyler ends up making the team because of that, because I think that's a possibility too that happens with one of the guys ahead of him. All right, thank you, Greg. We appreciate it. Thanks to our sponsors, Water Cleanup of Florida, Underdog. Use the code 5 FIVE. We'll see you from the OKC Miami game at Kaseya Center tonight.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.